I'm Roger Hayes. I'm the Director of Law Enforcement Services for the Governor's Office. And so I'm going to try to help get us through this piece. So let's talk about the media plan just a minute. So each grant, the next section of it is you have to put in the media plan. The media plan is basically, it just explains the how, when, and who you're going to announce your award of the grant to. At each grant must have a grant announcement that goes out within the first 90 days to tell the public and the media what you received a grant for, how much money you received, and what your goal is for that. Are you addressing child passenger safety in your grant? Are you addressing speeding in your grant? Things, traffic safety, things such as that. And then you also must go in there and outline how you plan to keep the public informed. Are you going to do releases on Facebook? Are you going to do social media posts? Are you going to give updates to the media, release them out at different times through the area? And then finally, just make sure that you tell what the media outlets are. List them by name. If it's the Albany Herald, put the Albany Herald, WJCL TV, your department Facebook page, your department website, all of those. Anywhere you plan to do that, please just go ahead and release that and put that in there. So let's talk about resource requirements. Resource requirements is a very important piece. Now we're going to start looking at tying the project in with the budget. So basically your resource requirements is going to provide a detailed justification of all your budgeted items. Those resources must support your problem ID, your activity, your objectives, and things such as that. So what you need to make sure, like if you have a speed problem, and I'm the law enforcement guy, so I'll kind of go that way a little bit. If you have a speed problem and you're requesting speed detection equipment, then that's where this would go in here. So you've got this problem with speed, that's where you're going to do it. If you have a SAD chapter and you're trying to get that up going, that's what you would put. Whatever you're needing to do for that, for this SAD chapter, you would do that. So just some different things you'll see on here to think about and answer for your questions when you're doing it. What personnel are needed? Do you need any personnel with it? Is there anything that's being asked for that? If so, what hours will they work? And you'll also need to attach their job description up in the documentation attachments previously. What's the type and quantity of equipment may you need? How will you use it and who will use it? And then is there specific training requirements for those that item? If it's a speed detection, is everybody that uses that has to be certified by the state to do that. So you have to make sure you address all of those things. So we'll be glad to help you any way we can with the resource requirements. We may have to send it back to you a time or two, but we're certainly try to get those done. So in the self-sufficiency piece, which is the last piece before we get into the budget, your self-sufficiency must explain in detail how the agency will continue the program when federal dollars are no longer available. Tell us what your plan is. We like to consider this money is seed money to get a project started. You must identify any other type of potential sources or non-federal funds, such as local government funds, public and private donations, and things such as that. Okay, so we'll move in now to enforcement and activity hours. So basically, enforcement and activity hours are only for law enforcement or prosecutors. These are reimbursable hours based upon actual pay rate, not an overtime pay rate, no fringe benefits or anything. It's actual how much does that officer make per hour. Uh, Enforcement and activity hours can be used for any qualified officer or deputy associated with the grant. If you have a high visibility enforcement grant that you're trying to address a speeding or an impaired driving problem, then you don't name the officer by name in there, but you can put multiple officers associated with that grant into there. This does not apply to TSRPs, traffic safety resource prosecutors, or training staff such as PAC or GIPSTIC, or places such as that. So when we talk about enforcement and activity hours, what is really allowable? Only hours related to that project can be claimed. If your officer works 12 hours a day and they work 4 hours doing speed enforcement that day, we can only reimburse you for those 4 hours. We can't reimburse for any of the other things. If we will reimburse for certain types of training that the officer will receive, but it has to be related to the project, such as drug recognition expert, standardized field sobriety training, child passenger safety technicians, and items such as that. But it must be documented in the application. It must be a piece in there that says they will be trained as DREs, SFSTs. Most of that, like in heat grants, that is a big piece. There's requirements for DREs, SFST, and CPST in the law enforcement heat grants. So what's not allowable? Right off the bat, court time is not allowable by federal statute, and we cannot pay overtime. So we only pay straight time based upon the numbers that you sent us. We cannot pay for general post training not related to the project, such as SWAT, firearms certification, the governor's initiative classes, your in-service, your annual in-service. If it's not related to the project, you cannot claim those hours. Additionally, you can't claim hours for one of those officers teaching themselves, even if they're teaching DRE, SFST, and they're not doing it within your home agency, we cannot reimburse for that as well.